Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today we're going to be learning how to draw Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas. You can probably see that this paper here is not white, it's kind of a brown color, and later on that's going to come in handy when I use the white colored pencil. But you don't have to necessarily start with brown paper, it's just a technique I'm going to be showing later on. Now you can see I got a square here, it measures 3 inches on all sides. That comes out to around 7.5 centimeters. And what I'm going to do now is focus a little closer in on the square, but I wanted to show you the amount of space that's required on all sides before we get started. So I'm going to refocus the camera and you're going to see me draw the shape of Jack Skellington's head. So it's an interesting shape. To me it looks a little like a gumdrop, I suppose. A little wider. It's like a circle that's a little wider, a little flat at the bottom, and then tapering just a little toward the top, which is interesting if you stop and think about it, because the human skull is actually, if anything, the other way around. A little wider at the top and narrower at the bottom. But that's part of what makes this a stylistically interesting character. Now I'm going to go ahead now and add the eyes. So I said add the eyes. I probably should have said add the eye sockets, because that's in fact what they are, just big black sockets. Notice that they're sort of oval shaped, fairly close to the top of the head. Notice the sort of space between the eyes and the contour of the top of the head. Now it's time to add the nostrils, which are really very close to being around the same level as the bottom of the eyes. So maybe not so much to say about these, but I would point out that they seem to be sort of angled in just a little bit. They're like narrow ovals that are pointing in just a little diagonally. Now it's time for maybe the most important part of the face, and that is to draw this big, wide, smiling mouth. Well, in my case, I'm going to have him smiling. I suppose you could draw him frowning if you like. But anyway, let's go ahead and get those lines into place. So you can see he really does sort of smile from ear to ear, although he doesn't have ears, but definitely the mouth extends very nearly from one side of the head to the other. Notice the space between the nostrils and the upper lip area here, quite a little gap between those two. And I guess the last thing I'll do, I'm going to come back and add the details of teeth later on, but for now let's go ahead and draw the lines of the neck. So you see quite a narrow neck here from side to side, but of course he's supposed to be a skeleton. Interestingly, there is no effort to simulate the sort of spine, the various vertebrae there. It really is just a simple white pole in a way, his neck. But make sure you get the length of it right, because it is separated quite a bit from his body. Now the next thing about the design, which I had never really noticed so much about Jack Skellington, is this big necktie that he has. And the center of the necktie has a head that I believe is the head of a bat. So let's go ahead and draw that. So yeah, you can see it's a relatively simple shape here. To me it looks a little bit like, a little peach shaped here, as it comes to a little bit of a point, and 2 fairly large ears pointing out just a little bit diagonally, and just these little white eyes, or later on they'll be white eyes. And now it's time to do these sort of unusual 3-pronged extensions of the bow tie. They're not really made to look like ribbons. It's sort of a fanciful design that's quite striking. Once you notice it, you realize it's a crucial part of the design. But I'll go ahead and, I'll do them one at a time so you can kind of get a sense of what the shape is. All right, so there's one of them, and a little difficult to describe. I guess some people might think it looks like a claw, or even like a flame. It almost has the shape of like flames coming out here. But you can feel free, I think, to play around and make these different shapes. You don't have to try to do exactly what I've done here. In fact, I believe that the lower one should actually be a little longer, but I've taken the liberty of shortening this one so as to allow space for something a little later on. I won't give it away, but let's go ahead then and draw the other side of this bow tie. Alright, so I'm going to do just maybe one more basic guideline before we refocus to start drawing the arms. I'm going to draw the sort of contour of his lapels, of his formal wear that he's always so dapperly dressed in. So yeah, let me go ahead. It's sort of going to be like a rough triangular shape. All right, so I've got that coming down here, and notice that it touches the lower line of that first square, for those of you who are sort of trying to get the proportions right, and his head should certainly not come anywhere past this line. In fact, it should have quite a little gap there between the two. Well, as I said, I'm going to refocus now and start working on the arms, and then we'll be getting fairly close to the real-time drawing part of the video. So you see the lines curve in almost sort of a feminine way, narrow at the waist, but I suppose that is in keeping with his skeletal structure underneath. And I guess I'll go ahead and sort of complete. He's got fairly broad shoulders, at least his suit does. And now it's time, as I said, to draw the arms. And instead of going into too much detail, I'm really going to draw just like stick figure arms, just to keep things simple. So you see, the length of the arms is key, and they really have made Jack Skellington have these very long, spindly limbs. Certainly part of the design, you know, makes him kind of elegant looking in a certain way. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to have him doing the same pose that I'm having him do in this illustration. Later on, you're going to see why I made his arms go in the pose that I did. But for now, let's finish up with one last little set of rough guidelines for the hands. And the way I'm going to draw them, it'll almost look sort of like baseball catcher's mitts or something like that. All right, well, that's it for the basic guidelines. And, you know, as far as these hand shapes here, they're going to get refined quite a bit as I draw the fingers and thumb and so forth. But I thought I would begin by continuing with the remaining details of the head. All right, now one thing that I never noticed until I started to study photos of the actual, you know, Jack Skellington models is that it's almost like there's two sets of teeth. There's this exterior, maybe decorative set of teeth that go all along the upper lip, and I suppose there's an actual number of lines that ought to go here, but I'm playing fast and loose this time and just sort of dropping in a line every once in a while and kind of winging it that way. But make sure that once you've established that width between each one of these lines, as you go down to do the lower lip, that you try to match that. Anyway, that will be, all of this stuff is going to get inked later on. But as I said, it's almost like there's two sets of teeth, and I'm doing my best to make these large enough because they are fairly large, and later on I'm going to be sort of inking in the area between them so as to make them more visible. And if you don't make them fairly large to begin with, you're going to end up with tiny little teeth, which is just as not accurate to the actual character. I noticed that one tooth was missing over here on the right-hand side. I'll just go ahead and darken in here to make that clear. Our right, his left. And I would assume that that's a permanent aspect of the character, and maybe some of you out there know better than I do. There are scenes where his teeth suddenly become sharp. So, you know, it's a playful character. It's not, I don't feel like this is quite one of these ones where you're like, make sure you do everything absolutely perfectly. I feel like there's a looseness and, as I said, a kind of playfulness to this character where you don't have to take it quite so seriously. These sockets are all going to get blackened in later on, and you know, basically I think we're done in terms of the facial details. I'm going to move ahead now and draw sort of the back part of the collar of his jacket, and some of this becomes a little hard to see later on because you end up with sort of black on black, but I'm going to go ahead and sort of delineate this anyway, the lapels of his jacket. And one, you know, thing about this video is I want the style, my sort of inking and coloring style, to be a little different from what I normally do. I mean, I have a lot of videos where I try really hard to make things look 3D and, you know, get a lot of light and shadow and that kind of stuff. This time I'm going to try to go for something a little more 2D or more like a graphic approach that just makes it bold and linear, and not really trying so much to be a convincing three-dimensional object. Now you can see that the lapel crosses over here on the right. Funny, just the other day I was talking about women's jackets versus men's jackets or coats, and indeed the men's do seem to cross over on the right, the women's crossing over on the left. All right, so sorry for the abrupt interruption there, but I realized that I was beginning to draw outside of the video frame. It happens periodically, but fortunately I was able to sort of come back here and fix the problem. Now I'm going down here to draw the lower edge. There is sort of a point to the fabric, and I'm not going to bother too much with details down here because, again, it's all is going to get obscured by ink later on. But suffice to say, you have that one buttoning right over left. And that's about it, really. So now we can move on to drawing the arms. And I'm going to use the original line here for the... you can see that I actually did this previously. Sorry about that, folks. Before realizing my mistake. So I erased it and tried to recreate what was there before. Anyway, this is the way the arms attach to the jacket, and there's this puffiness up here. That's one thing that I noticed as I studied the character. I'm just building out from the original line, trying to keep it the width about the same on all sides. I don't think his forearms get any wider than his upper arms. It's all sort of like, and the sort of spindliness of the character is a big part of what makes him distinctive. And boy, is he ever distinctive. Jack Skellington, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to draw this line here of the forearm crossing in front, because that does come into play later when I ink and then start adding stripes. He's got stripes, and if you know that this one comes in front, that helps you with drawing those stripes. So we've basically got the shape of the one sleeve here. I'm going to go ahead and do the other sleeve in time-lapse, since it's pretty much going to be the same thing. Okay, so I've got the arms finished. It's time to move on to the hands. I think I will refocus a little so that you can see the details as I begin to draw the fingers. Okay, so what I'm doing is having his fingers sort of pinched together here so that he can be holding a piece of string. I guess I'll go ahead and give away my plan, although you probably saw it in the thumbnail of the video, so big surprise here. But I'm going to have him holding this string, and then the words Happy Halloween will be sort of hanging from the string. So maybe doubles as an illustration and a kind of seasonal greeting. But he does have 3 fingers, as we so often see in the world of cartoon characters. Not true of all cartoon characters, but certainly many of them you see. Starting with Mickey Mouse and moving forward, this idea of the 3-fingered hand is very common. I think it's just a way of making the hands less detailed looking, a little cuter when you remove. It's cuter when you remove one of the fingers. Doesn't sound very cute, does it? I don't know if he bothers, when I say he, I guess I'm talking about the guy who designed the maquette or the character, but I don't know if we're getting so much into the details of skeletal anatomy here, but anyway, there's this sort of area of the palm. And yeah, hopefully that gives you the basics. I mean, I wasn't talking too much, sadly, about how I did that. Way to go, Crilly. But you can see it's sort of, you create these 3 tips of the fingers that are pointing down towards where I drew the thumb, and then I sort of get those in place and then build back, refining as I go to make it look like fingers pinching together. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the other hand, and then we can move on to that little Happy Halloween greeting part of the illustration. Okay, so now we can get on to this idea that I had of the sort of string with the letters dangling from it, and basically it's just a matter of connecting these 2 points with a curving line. Now, a lot of you might say, oh, it's so hard for me to draw a perfectly smooth line. But again, as I said, I'm not going to be going for like a super perfect inking style with this. I'm going to go a little sketchy. So if you find that you've created a kind of a wobbly line, that's not a problem, really. It doesn't need to be a problem the way that we're going to do this later on. I'm going to have the remaining bit of the string kind of go off into a curly cue. And that idea of a sort of curly cue, kind of a line, crilly cue, kind of a line, is sort of part of the style of Nightmare Before Christmas, right? They have that big curving sort of piece of land, I don't know what it is, sort of a hill that curves up and then keeps looping around. That's sort of part of the design theme almost, so I thought that would kind of fit in. And now it's time to actually write Happy Halloween. And I have just one little tip for you folks. If you want to write the word Happy Halloween, or the words, I should say, Happy Halloween, always start with the A. Start right in the middle. Find the middle, wherever that may be. I've decided that this is kind of the middle. And that's where you draw the letter A, because Halloween divides into kind of 15 spaces, including the blank space between Happy and Halloween. And so A ends up being the sort of central letter. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'll write a few of the letters so that you get the idea of what I'm doing here. I'm going to go back and draw the H, which is going to begin to spell the word hall. Happy Hall. But basically, if you get the A in the dead center and then you begin to work across, your main thing is just to make sure you don't make the letters so big that you can't fit in the complete Halloween. It looks like I'm just barely going to make it, but I'm going to go ahead and make my W a little bit cramped here so as to make sure I have the space. This is what happens when you kind of wing it. I probably shouldn't have made those L's so big. What was I thinking? But I'm going to go ahead and sort of reduce the size of the E's. This is another trick when I'm running out of space. Reduce letters in the middle so that you can have a nice big letter at the end. And it doesn't look as if you ran out of space. Of course, if I were serious, I would go back and erase all this. But anyway, hopefully we can get away with that. I might be able to correct things a little in the inking stage. We'll see. But that leaves you space for putting in the word happy, and so just leave a space here, and I'm actually going to get the Y in and kind of draw backwards. How weird. Again, got to learn from my mistake and not make the two P's too large. But you get the idea. Let me go ahead and time-lapse through the rest of the lettering here. So having got all that in place, I can pull out this Micron Pigma, and I am, as I said, going to try to go for a deliberately loose, kind of sketchy style, just for a change of pace, because I do, my goal with this channel is to have a wide variety of styles, and sometimes I do sort of fall into a pattern of, manga or else realism. And those are the two main styles that you see, and I think I should, make space for sort of cartoony styles. I mean, there's just so many different types of styles. And especially with this channel having been around for a number of years now, I think it certainly doesn't hurt to shake things up and mix in different things. So you can see me doing multiple passes at each line. I would not normally do that in my usual style. I'm usually trying to do a fairly clean inking style, but I thought this sort of scratchy look might be kind of interesting. Let me know what you think of it. And what I'm going to do is bring in Old Man Time-Lapse, who's off there eating candy corn. Stop eating that candy corn, old man time-lapse. We need you to help me speed through this video so that we can get onto the coloring stage, which I think is going to be actually a lot of fun because of this brown paper. So we'll go ahead and bring in old man time-lapse, finish off the inking stage, and be back to do some coloring. So I thought I would pause just a moment to show you that I'm going to switch now to a Sharpie, which is really pretty unusual for me in terms of an inking tool. But like I said, I really just need a lot of black in here, and there's no reason for me to just labor through these tiny little black lines when what I need is bold, pretty much flat black. So, oh, and then I also want to point out how on the fly I did indeed try to correct a little bit for, you know, running out of space as was happening there. So. Anyway, hopefully it looks a little better than it would have if I had stuck with the original lines. But let's go ahead then and finish off the you know, black areas with the Sharpie. Alright, so a little challenging at points. As I said, you get this sort of black on black situation where it's a little tricky to differentiate between one area and the other. You can see that I left little gaps sometimes. I just tried to leave a little of the paper peeking through to help separate out those you know, one part from the other. But now the fun part of pulling out this white Prismacolor colored pencil and beginning to add stripes. I'm going to go right onto the clothing first because I think that's where it really makes a big difference. And again, I'm not getting too uptight about like how many stripes should there be. I don't believe the character is done in that spirit of perfectionism. So I feel like I can just go ahead and drop in some lines here and there. And over here on his necktie, just have to be careful to follow the wavy form of it. I think you basically can only fit maybe 2 lines, 3 if you're lucky, onto each one of these. What are they? They're like flaming bow tie strands. Who knows? Somebody tell me if you've come up with a good word for what these things are. I'm going to go ahead and go into the top of his head, and you know, you can see that the paper makes the huge difference. Having chosen this brown paper, we can really get this white pencil to really pop. And this would, you know, a lot of times I would be using my beloved white gouache, but not today. This is like 2 weeks in a row, no white gouache. What's going on? Crilly, have you forsaken the beloved white gouache? I'm sure I will be bringing back the gouache, but I thought people would appreciate a sort of a craft project that didn't involve quite so many different materials. And, you know, it's not like everyone has a tube of white gouache lying around the house. I think you're a little more likely to have colored pencils, a Sharpie, even this brown paper. You could get a brown paper bag, you know, from the grocery store and use that. And it doesn't even have to be brown. If you can find any color construction paper, right, that has any sort of a tone to it, the white pencil is going to show up. I was going to point out that I am trying to get a little hint of light and shadow. I'm just addicted to it. I can't stop trying to convey at least some sense. And you can see that it's very bold white here, and then I'm going bold white at the bottom of the socket, and then sort of letting up just a little in some of these other areas so that it doesn't look quite so white, and as a result, hopefully there's going to be a little bit of an illusion of depth there, or it reveals the structure of the eye socket just a little bit. But otherwise, like I said, I'm not going for a super 3D effect on this one. And maybe that tells you all you need to know about the white colored pencil part of it. You know, while I'm at it doing this real-time coloring, I'm going to pull out this orange Prismacolor, and that's what I thought would be a good one for the lettering. So again, I'm not going to do every single letter, but I just do a few of them here in real time to show you how even the orange benefits from that brown paper underneath. But you do have to make sure that it's, I would say, colored pencil. If you're using marker, for example, it's not opaque enough. I don't think it's going to give you quite the same effect. That is to say that the orange marker would be translucent a little bit through to the paper, and you'd end up with a kind of a muddier orange than what I'm getting with this largely opaque orange colored pencil. Well, let's go ahead and bring in Old Man Time-Lapse. I'm sorry, put down those candy corns. I was just getting to the good ones. And we're going to finish off all of this coloring and the stripes and all the rest of it. And I think we will finally be done so that I can come back and give you a few final words. All right, well, there's my video on drawing Jack Skellington. I did want to point out that I used yellow pencil here on the teeth. Poor Jack, evidently unable to get hold of the high-quality toothpaste that he deserves. But otherwise, you know, it's a matter of following along with the different parts with the white-colored pencil. It really becomes important, actually, the directions that you make those lines go in terms of separating out all these different parts. And otherwise, let me know what you thought about this video. If you have any suggestions for other styles, you know, this was a sort of a Tim Burton style that we did in this video. If you have any other styles you'd like to see me do, please let me know in the comments section. I'm happy to try to get as much variety into this channel as I can. But for now, let me thank anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books like Brody's Ghost or Meeky Falls, my 2 graphic novel series, as well as The Realism Challenge, my book about how to draw in a hyper-realistic style, and of course, Mastering Manga and Mastering Manga 2, my How to Draw books. I really do greatly appreciate the support of people who help me out by ordering those books. But let me go ahead and lay down this pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll be back with another one real soon.